Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about the brand new movie, We're All Going to the World's Fair. Now this did premiere last year at the Sundance Film Festival in 2021. I think it had different release dates. It said April 15th of 2022, but finally it was available for rent or to rent on Prime, so that's how I watched it. I'm not sure if you could watch it anywhere else. I could definitely see this go to streaming one day, but for now it's available to rent or purchase on Prime. So this is directed by Jane Schoenbrunn. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. This is her directorial debut for her feature-length film, and it is also a very short movie at only an hour and 27 minutes with some credits in there. So it's a very, very short, digestible, easy watch. So this is described as a coming-of-age horror drama movie that follows Casey, a teenage girl alone in her attic bedroom when she decides to take on the World's Fair challenge. This immerses her into this online role-playing horror game where she begins documenting changes that may or may not be happening to her in online videos. This movie was such a strange yet beautiful movie. It was so bizarre and really not what I was expecting at all, and I think in a good way. This is just a very different type of movie, nothing I've really seen before. Firstly, I think that this has some great commentary on internet culture, especially on YouTube and just the internet in general, and probably has some of the most accurate portrayals of the usage of the internet and technology that I've seen in a movie. This just feels very realistic, very real in how teenagers navigate the internet today. I absolutely loved the performance from Anna Cobb, who is the lead, who plays Casey in this movie. I think she really carried this movie, obviously. There are very few side characters in this. There's only one other real character, I would say. That's not even a huge part of this movie, so it's really focused on Casey, and I think Anna Cobb did a great job in this performance. I mean, some of the scenes and some of the takes were very long and like single take shots, so she really had to perform and like be on for a really long time. I also believe that this is Anna Cobb's first feature-length film as well, so a lot of kind of newbies into the genre, a lot of introductions into filmmaking and the genre as a whole. And I think it was a pretty solid entrance into the genre. It's not going to be for everyone. It's definitely a movie that is very hit or miss for some people. There's going to be people who find things out of this that they really enjoy, and there's going to be people who don't really understand it and don't enjoy the slower burn pace of this movie. Now, this is a pretty low budget movie, and to me that was kind of noticeable at times. Some of the B-roll I felt a little bit like iPhone footage, and so the noticeability of the fact that this was a low budget isn't really a good or a bad thing. It just was, you know, you can just tell, and it's a matter of fact, like it is a low budget movie, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you can do a lot of things with a low budget movie, and I think this one was generally executed pretty well. Just a couple things were a little noticeable, but I absolutely loved a lot of the imagery. I think it is a very unique and original horror film. Maybe would have been better as a short film because I do feel a lot of the scenes really dragged on and kind of unnecessarily. Maybe there was a purpose to make you feel uncomfortable because there were many times where the scenes were just so long that it was kind of awkward almost and a little uncomfortable. So maybe that was intentional, but I could just see this story kind of being better as a short. Now, the horror elements were definitely lacking in this movie. I wouldn't even stretch to say that this is indeed a horror movie, maybe a thriller drama. It's heavy on the drama side, but it does have horror elements in it. But really not a horror movie, so don't go into it expecting a lot of horror. But the horror that you do get, there's two scenes in particular. I loved the imagery. I loved the visuals. One of them so much so that I had to rewind it to rewatch it. It was so great, so horrifying. It kind of reminded me of Paranormal Activity in the best way. I think if you go into it expecting more of a dark psychological film, I think that is a better mindset than going in expecting a lot of horror, because I was pretty let down with the horror elements in this. They were great, the ones that were in there, but I wanted so much more. Like, we can see the potential there for it to be really, really horrifying and really scary, and some scenes were definitely there, but there just wasn't enough of them, especially in this length of a movie. I want more. I need more. The score is absolutely incredible. It's right up my alley. It's done, of course, by Alex G. This has been what people are most excited about with this movie is the score and the person behind it. So 10 out of 10 on that. I could easily listen to the soundtrack of this movie over and over again, just in my day-to-day doing the dishes, casual listening. It is so good. But this movie definitely really focuses more on building the atmosphere, and the story is pretty minimal as well. So it's a lot of that tension building and wondering what is going to happen next. And I don't think that makes for a very good rewatch, because once you know everything that happens, there's not a lot happening. So it's not something that's going to really entertain a lot of people. I think the tension building and the atmosphere building works for some people. It was definitely, I don't regret watching this. It was kind of in the middle for me. I think I gave it 3 out of 5. It was decent, but I wanted so much more out of it. But for a first film, for a lot of people involved, I think it was actually executed really well. But it's definitely not going to be for everyone when it comes to a horror movie. I mean, clearly, when you look at how the critics have rated this movie really, really high, and how the audience score tends to be very low, like I don't think audience members knew what to expect in this and ended up disappointed. And I kind of had an open mind going in. I think that's why I wasn't too heavily let down with the amount of horror in it. But critics rate it really high, so it really is going to be hit or miss for a lot of people. But if you want a slower burn psychological drama with like one standout horror visual, sometimes that's not enough for an hour-and-a-half movie. But if that sounds good to you, then I do recommend it. There were some things though that weren't great in my opinion, so let's get into a little bit more of those. Like I mentioned, there were scenes that dragged on and on and on. The first scene was very, very long. That one didn't seem to be that uncomfortable to get through, but I do find that some of these scenes that just took forever to move on were very uncomfortable, and if that was intentional, it worked. It was kind of genius if that's the case. One scene in particular, had to fast forward. It was so long that I had to fast forward. It's an hour and 20 minutes, 25-minute movie. Why am I fast forwarding in this? You know what I mean? But it was specifically when she's watching ASMR. I personally cannot stand the whispering ASMR sound, so that is when I fast forwarded, because it would not end, and it was like torture to my ears, so I fast forwarded. I don't think I missed anything in the plot. It was just an ASMR video. But like, why was that scene so long? Why were we listening to a generic ASMR video for so long? Like, it just felt like filler some of the time. So I think the balance of this movie was a little bit off, and that's why people generally aren't really enjoying this movie. I do think some of the scenes fell flat and, dare I say, a little bit boring at times. They weren't terrible. Nothing about this movie is like terrible except for the ASMR whispering. Can't do that, but everything else, it was fine. It was entertaining to an extent, but I did obviously want so much more, like I've said. The boring scenes and the lengthy scenes did kind of take away from the entertainment value from this movie, which is why I say it's probably not going to be a very good rewatch. This is not one that I'm going to be excited to rewatch, because it was such a slow burn and not enough entertainment value for me to sit down and watch it again. But the potential of this movie was so good, and it's a little bit disappointing because they could have really run with so many things. I think this is more of a commentary piece. It wasn't meant to be super horrific, because horror is just one of the genres that is used to describe this movie. So I don't think it's supposed to be in your face, very horrific paranormal activity jump scares. I think it is meant to be a commentary piece on teens and the internet and their relationship, because this is the most accurate movie in a portrayal of that. So that's why I'm so conflicted with this movie, because I did want more, but because I had an open mind, I think that's why I wasn't too disappointed in it. And it was good. I don't regret watching it, because as a commentary piece and a drama, it was pretty good, and the performance was great, and very uncomfortable. Unsettling is a good word for this movie, but obviously as a horror movie, it's a letdown. I don't really need to do spoilers. Obviously, there's really not a lot going on in this movie. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, things escalate. Obviously, there's building of tension, but the story falls flat in the end, and I'm not a huge fan of the ending and how it just kind of wraps up. It just felt a little bit rushed. So this one's a tricky one. This one is just a bizarre experience. It is very unique. I will give it that. It's very original, and I like it in that sense. And obviously, I like the portrayal of like the relationship relationship between using the internet as a teenager and kind of how they get absorbed into it and like sucked into it in an unhealthy way. So I think if you go in not expecting a dark horror movie and instead frame your expectations to be more of a drama, psychological commentary piece on the internet, especially on like the weird side of YouTube. There's a lot of that going on, as well as a beautiful score and cinematography that's really good, despite a couple of the B-roll scenes, which just weren't my favorite. That's a personal thing, just my opinion. Then you would have a good time watching this movie. So just reframe your expectations with this, and I think you'll enjoy it, but just have an open mind about it as well, because it really could go either way for everyone. I would love to know your thoughts on this movie if you have seen We're All Going to the World's Fair. I think the name is pretty cool too, though, and I like the concept of the internet challenge. It's just very like reminiscent of old YouTube and, you know, mid 2000s and all that kind of stuff. So it's very topical and relatable. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on We're All Going to the World's Fair down in the comments if you've seen it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.